How did you approach the initial anxieties of outputting with people in person? It's been going pretty well for me so far talking to Spanish-speaking coworkers, but I definitely have off days, which makes my relationship with them kind of complicated. I realize that human interaction itself is complicated and that I have off days even in English, but the fact that I've spent years cramming my brain full of hours and hours of Spanish definitely adds a bit of pressure to the situation. Thanks for all the great content, and I can't wait to see where things go from here. So, the only real advice that I can give is just do it. Because, when I first started speaking Japanese to people in real life, I was nervous and I was experiencing anxiety. But I think the only way to get past that anxiety is just to push through it. And the more that you speak to native speakers, then the less anxious you get. But even for me, when I go and talk to a Japanese speaker on the street, or I talk to a Japanese waiter at a Japanese restaurant when I'm out with my friends, I'm still a little bit nervous for whatever reason, just because, I don't know. Well, first of all, what if they're not Japanese? Or what if they're like fluent in English and they just answer in like a perfect American accent? What if they're just freaked out? So part of it is more like a social anxiety rather than like a language learning related anxiety. Actually, now that I think about it, it's pretty much all that. But hey, even if you wanted to go and talk to like a native speaker that natively spoke your native language, it's still nerve-wracking, right? To just go talk to a stranger, because it takes a lot of courage to do that. So I think a lot of the anxiety is actually just normal old social anxiety, and it's not really necessarily language learning anxiety. So maybe if you can Google for like general tips for social anxiety, then that would help. But even with that, I think the fundamental solution is you just got to do it. And the more that you do it, then the more you realize that even if you get embarrassed and the interaction doesn't go well, ultimately, you don't really have anything to lose. You're going to forget about it 10 minutes later, and you're never going to see that person again. And so it doesn't really matter that much. And when the interaction does go well, then it can be a really awesome experience. So, you're never going to have 100% of your interactions go well. You're always going to have awkward interactions, but that's just kind of par for the course. Now, for me in particular, I think something that helped was that most of the output that I did initially was in kind of one-off situations. Like I talked about in the past, how the first time I really outputted after becoming fluent was when I had this 2-week tour guide job where I was guiding Japanese people around my city. So in that situation, after those 2 weeks passed, then I never saw any of those people ever again. And so in a way, it didn't matter if I made a fool of myself, because even if I did, it wasn't going to be some kind of permanent stain. It was just going to end and then be over. And also, a lot of the initial interactions I had were just kind of cold approaching people that looked Japanese and trying to speak Japanese to them. And again, worst comes to worst, you have an awkward interaction, you say goodbye, you never see them again, and then half an hour later, you've forgotten it even happened. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. Of course, sometimes the really awkward ones you will remember for kind of like days and maybe even weeks after, and you'll wake up thinking about it in the middle of the night. But most of the time, that doesn't really happen. And especially once you've been doing it for a while, then the awkward interactions kind of affect you a lot less. But anyway, I practiced with those kind of one-off interactions where there was less at stake, and I think that helped. And then also, the first time that I started to have like ongoing relationships with Japanese people was when I transferred into my 4-year university when I was like 3.5 years into AJAT. And by that point, I was so fluent at Japanese that the confidence that I had in my ability basically made the anxiety not that big of an issue. And I can totally understand kind of what this person is talking about when they're like, sometimes I have good interactions, sometimes I have bad interactions, but because I'm interacting with the same people on an ongoing basis, the more awkward, lower quality interactions kind of take a big hit because I have to see those people again in the coming days and weeks. And because of that's one of the reasons why I would say that it is difficult to have ongoing relationships before you're really at a strong level of fluency. And so if you have the luxury, what I would recommend is before you get to that strong level of fluency, focus on one-off interactions or short-term interactions, and then also talking to tutors, because that's the nice thing about a tutor is that they're there to help you. And so there's no pressure or social anxiety. Like an italki tutor, like not one who's going to give you language lessons, but just one who you can pay them like $5 an hour to just have random conversations with you. Because if your language ability just isn't quite there, then you're going to have some crappy interactions, and that is really going to put a burden on your relationship if you're trying to have an actual like ongoing relationship with somebody. So that is what I'd say. Hope this was useful / entertaining. Thanks so much for supporting, and best of luck with your studies.